Meanwhile, Isanda says, I think UDL is important because it shifts the focus from trying to change the learner to changing the learning environment. It encourages teachers to plan lessons that are flexible from the beginning so that all learners, regardless of their abilities, backgrounds, or learning preferences, have meaningful opportunities to participate and succeed. This promotes equity rather than simply treating everyone the same. One of the biggest challenges I foresee is changing teachers' mindsets and classroom practices. Many teachers were trained using traditional one-size-fits-all approaches, so implementing UDL requires ongoing professional development and support. Another challenge is balancing curriculum demands with the time needed to plan flexible lessons. However, I believe that even small changes in lesson planning and assessment can make classrooms more inclusive without requiring expensive resources. So, Isanda, you've contextualized what we're talking about. You've kind of honed down on the challenges which we currently have. Time for for teachers. Mbali is saying, Mbali and others are saying training is not even happening. Can't talk of ongoing training. Okay, it's not even happening. Can't talk of ongoing training and the rest of it. And we are saying our way out for now is those small changes. Anyway, people, I want to. I didn't even get Dr. Carissa's bio. Amandi, I forgot to get your bio to introduce you. Well, I want to welcome my colleague, Dr. Carissa Amani. I've known him for a long time. I'll do the introduction will be a more personal one. I've known him for a long time. I think you started with, I can't remember now who started first, the PhD journey. If it was you that started first, and then I think you started first. Yeah, I think you started first, and then I then followed afterwards. Yeah. But we kind of were doing our PhD programs. He was ahead and I was coming behind and everything. And I remember, you remember, I don't know, Amanda, if you remember that restaurant we went to with Judy somewhere, yeah. And then that's when we started discussing colonial things. The discussion started from that time. So having discussions around it. But Dr. Carissa went on to actually, go deeper into the colonial studies. Like I said, his study is on one of the chapters is there that he wrote, which was looking at father experiences in I think in taking care of children with intellectual disability. You need to read it to see some of the interesting findings that were coming up from it. But he's also involved he's been publishing a lot, involved with international and national organizations, and but he doesn't mince his words when it comes to decolonial thoughts. He goes straight for the jugular. That's how I'll say it. He goes straight for the main topic. So, Dr. Amani, welcome. Welcome. Amani, if there's anything you want to say more about yourself, please, you're welcome to do that.
Thank you, Ike, for the very good introduction. Bio that is not written. Yes, yeah. So maybe just to first of all, I appreciate UDL in action because I see Mama Ho Sechai. Well, I think the last time we had this talk, we didn't have sign language interpretation,
Yeah.
so that is it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you very much because it's like we are living, we are drinking what we are preaching. I think it's something we were discussing some time back with Judy. We keep on talking about UDL and all these things, but how do we move? How can we move from theory to actual implementation? To doing it so that it just doesn't stop from being rhetorical, just real, because especially our field, it's a field that touches real life more directly. Yes, we need to solve real challenges that are felt. And I also thank you. I see Unati. Hi, Unati.
Yes.
And yes, the others I can see the names, so it's fine. Yeah. So there's something I
Sorry,
want to
just
add is that
I wanted to do it to say Unati is actually convening the course with me now. We're working on it together. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think even last time she was involved because I remember us chatting. She attended the
Yes, yes,
talk
yes.
last time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am, as Ike said, I work in an organization called African Population and Health Research Center, which is located in Nairobi. It's a research organization, We have regional offices in Senegal. Yeah, so I'm generally in human development. That's my department. But in other words, human development touches on education, early childhood development, yes, and disability. Although it is cross-cutting, but we also have it housed there. Yes, and also decoloniality is big in our organization and including in the work that we do. So yes, I appreciate these opportunities of uh, conversing or having a conversation about this topic. Something that it does to me, it reminds me of the roots and what I need not to forget. Because sometimes in the research, can I say, this NGO research is not like the research that we do at UCT, because there we have the time. I don't know. There's some depth into it, but when you move out, out is like you have the funding, you've just won a grant. Please implement, manage, finish the grant, move to another one. So you don't have that time to really immerse yourself and to really like get a feel, try to like analyze or see the world using the people the research is about. So it is something that I like these talks because it keeps. In fact, I was watching that video that I understand you have access to, and I was like, wow, 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 this was me. That was in 20. I think I did that video in 2020. Yes. So yes, that's what I just want to add, Ike, and I'll give it back to you for the next. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. And it's interesting from what you just said around research that's happening in NGOs, is similar sentiments the students are picking up. They're picking it up in terms of depth. There's no depth that is happening when new theories come from the global north. Oh, we need to implement it. There's no depth in terms of understanding the local context and taking that into consideration so that there's an immersion, just like you're saying. So there's an immersion, and so that the results, it bears fruit and the results come out. So people, I don't know, is there anybody who wants to kick off with any question for Dr. Amani in terms of the discussions we've been having? Afikile, yes, go ahead. And then Alice. If you can, just turn on your camera if you can, so that he will just see your face. I would have told you guys to introduce yourselves, but we have limited time. So if you can turn on your camera so that Dr. Carissa can see your face, at least.
Can you please excuse me for turning on my camera?
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, hello, Dr. Amani. I would like to ask if colonial ideas about disability are still influencing education today. What are practical steps do you think schools can take to make inclusive education more relevant to African communities? Thank you.
Okay. Ike, you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. After that, then
yeah. Okay, thanks, Ike. I think I don't know. Last time I was, when we had I don't know if I mentioned that I was working on a paper, but sadly, around that issue, and sadly it has gotten 3 rejections, but I'm still pushing. Yes, yeah, I'm still pushing. Yes. So the argument is, I mean, the question is, if colonial ideas are still maybe directing what happens on disability, or we are still in that yoke of coloniality when we talk about disability. What steps can schools take to make education more relevant? Okay. So I start with this paper that I'm talking about, where we were using, I want to use the example of UDL that Ike, I think, mentioned, where we started that UDL linked with I mean, the coloniality linked with UDL.
Mm.
So the first thing is UDL can be thought as it's, I don't want to say it's the colonial idea, because where it comes from it can be challenged, but its ideas are quite radical. Like, let's do things in a different way. Okay, so let us teach our teachers in how to use UDL in the classroom, so that children with disabilities or students with disabilities can be more involved. Yes, or can participate more. I mean, they can get better learning outcomes. Then we teach our teachers, and then they go to school. And then this is a school that has its own curriculum, its own traditions, its own culture. So how do we expect this teacher to 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 bring real change in that school? Of course, one way will be the teacher can, like the teacher can, there are things he or she can do, including adopting the material in the classroom, making them presenting them in varied ways, using even code switching in the classroom. But then, because the curriculum is kind of rigid, there's a way, like if you look at, sorry, I'm giving this example of UCT. I don't know if we are that level of how is the exam. Is the exam, for example, in English, in Zulu, in Xhosa, or in other language? We talk about multiple means of representation, but how far can that go? Does it just stop at Ike and Punati bringing Mamohao to try to represent information in different ways, not only oral, but in other ways? Or in the exam, I know when we did this course in 2019 and 2020, I think, there was, we did a different way of examining. So that is just not the traditional written essay, you know? Can people maybe speak, you know? Yeah, so we did that, but at the university, maybe it's a different level, like there's a bit of autonomy. But when you go to schools, real schools now in the districts, in the provinces, how possible is that? Do we go back to the national? Is the national examination structured in a particular way that cannot be changed? That cannot maybe speak to the UDL principles. So let me go back to the paper I was talking about. So that paper we did was like arguing for the shortfalls. I mean, the shortfalls of UDL, because it is presented as universal, but what is universal is like it's a way, it's colonized, it's colonial. What is universal is colonial, because it's UDL pretends to be neutral, like you can do this, and it is like it is blind to what is knowledge. What is knowledge? The question of what is knowledge? Is knowledge only okay? Let me not say it is blind. That is too um, uh, no. Maybe that's not how it is. But it needs to pay more attention to the issues of uh, what is knowledge, so that it's not on, so that we just don't focus on access, because for me UDL is more on access, but that big question on access to what, which knowledge, sometimes is not talked about enough. Sorry, I'm going, I feel like I'm not I'm going uh, rounds, I'm making some rounds, but how can schools make education more relevant? So if I were a teacher, what I will do is use these principles that I've gotten, this knowledge that I've gotten, uh, and make those small changes in the classroom, and appreciating that there is a whole big coloniality that is ruling the world, that not only South Africa, but even in Kenya, that needs to be challenged. That coloniality is what has uh, makes the focus on standardized exams. Because for me, I believe UDL even challenges that issue of standardization, you know, of high stakes exams. You need to pass exams to go to university, you know, so that you go to university, you pass the exams again, and then your chances of getting a better job are increased, you know. So it's like, no, maybe it's not, and you know, here we are saying passing exams is only defined in one way, which is the national exams. No. So UDL is not, how I understand UDL is not about national exams. Even if there's a national exam, but it's not one, it's not a written text. Can we present this exam in varied ways, in other ways, not only written? You know, can we use the different talents of our learners to to understand, to really get to understand what they know about something we have taught, you know. So for me, I would just say that coloniality is big. It's a big fight, but I think we are somewhere. So we continue raising our voices so that that big picture can change. But we also try to make small steps as practitioners, as teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. That's an excellent answer. Afikile, I hope he answered your question, because he framed it very well. You could see what it is. You could see why I started also talking about that knowledge aspect, because there's the danger of getting lost in the implementation and not forgetting the big picture of whose knowledge is very critical. That's what Dr. Carissa is saying. Whose knowledge, first of all, and UD has not dealt with that. Has not dealt with that. So, but we must keep it in mind. Thank you very much. Alice, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, Dr. Amani. So my question is that it's related to in your lecture you said something about you define coloniality as a virus. So now my question is, since you are defining coloniality as a virus that persists even after formal colonialism ends, in your view, is the current global movement, I'm not sure if movement is the correct word to use, but is the current global movement for inclusive education a cure? So keyword is cure for the virus, or is it possible that it is just another symptom, keyword symptom, of coloniality being imposed on the global south?
Thank you. That's Alice. Alice,
Yeah.
thank you, Alice, for that question. I am not sure that I used that word virus, but as it was 2020 when we made that. But I understand. Yes. Yes. Okay. And I will just go back to another paper that we did with Kofi, with Joachim and Jude. I think that was and Benedict Letian. Yes, it is called, that paper was called, okay, I need to check it. I don't want to give you the wrong one. Inclusive spaces. Okay, I'll find the title. Yeah, but we were talking about that thing. Inclusive education itself can, in a way, be viewed as a form of coloniality, because you can start with where does it come from? Where does this idea come from? How do we define inclusive education? You know, let me find you the article. Spaces, there should be something around spaces. Yes, from excluding schools to excluding spaces. Spatial and post-colonial reflections on inclusive education in Africa. Okay, I hope Teams has a chat box.
Yes, yeah, it does. Yeah, can drop the
I can just
should be at the top of your Teams. You see chat there next to people.
React, your people raise, react, view more. Camera.
There's no chat. It's not checked there.
No, maybe it's because I'm not using a UCT account, using my work account, but it's fine. I'll send to Ike. Let me send Ike.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then I'll send it to students.
Yeah, and it's open access. Yeah. So okay, I've sent it. Okay, so it's we are saying yes, coloniality is we have it. It's in our lives. Maybe that's how that virus thing comes. Yeah. So inclusive education, yeah, it is a very good idea, very good idea, but we shouldn't swallow it wholesomely. We should be critical in how we view inclusive education. First of all, the tendency of inclusive education. Just let me give an example. This is what we talk about in that paper. What is inclusive education? So sometimes, in the global north, it is like they already have universal access to education, or almost universal access to education. So for them, it is actually what happens inside the school and what happens inside the classroom. But you look at our environments in the global south, sometimes it is even universal access to education is already a thing. When you come to students with disabilities, for example, or persons with disabilities, their access to education, how is it? It is very much wanting. A lot of, at least for example, in Kenya, a lot of children are still struggling to access education. So is inclusive education getting children from the community to the school, or is inclusive education already, we are in the school and let's see what happens? So we were making those that kind of thinking. So maybe for our contexts, inclusive education could be more about let's get everyone in the school, first of all, but then our friends in the global north can be yeah, that's fine, but let us focus on UDL, for example, what happens inside the classroom. So there is like some tension, and then this other issue of epistemology that also Ike was talking about. I saw another paper that was arguing like what is the definition of inclusive education. For them, it was like it is an education that should be inclusive of other knowledges, other knowledges, other ways of knowing. So not like this already we are in schools. We are in these schools which are factory-like, because you look at the history of education, you see how the school is nowadays structured. It's like it's the factory system, or sometimes even the military system. What happens? There's a teacher, there's an instructor, you talk, there are people there. One is giving this, there's supervision, there's surveillance, but there are other ways of education that are not using that logic. Like you go to the traditional or the African ways of knowing, where we didn't have formal schools per se, but it doesn't mean we didn't have formal education. We have very many instances of where, like in our case, there were bush schools. You go to the bush for a certain time. When you come back, you have skills, you have all that, you can survive on your own. But how is that considered? I mean, in modern days. So inclusive so this paper was arguing that inclusive education is actually an education that can embrace all those ideas of what is knowledge. Yeah, so I think yes, inclusive education needs to be thought of very in critical ways, because if we take it superficially, we go back to coloniality. We replicate. We just start to consume without really making genuine transformation. And there are papers written around this issue. Who is this? I think Walton, who is a South African, but I think she's in the UK now. Elizabeth Walton. She did a very good paper. If I find it, I will also send to Ike. Walton on, let me tell you, Elizabeth Walton, inclusive education, so that you can also maybe check out how there is this decolonizing through inclusive education. Let me see if this is the one I meant. That
Alice,
one was,
you
yes, I think
satisfied?
this is, yes, yeah.
So I was just asking Alice, are you satisfied with Dr. Mani answered your question? You're speaking, you're mute.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no, it's you did answer my question, but then now I was just thinking of, okay, if it's a thing about the policies and actually and inclusive education, including I think he said something about the students being in education. So now it got me thinking about his paper. He mentioned something about if students with disabilities are actually receiving an education, or is it just about schooling? Like, so I'm not sure if he's able to explain a little bit more on that part of one actually being included in the education system, or and the difference between education and schooling.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so this goes back to the research that the research from my PhD, whereby in this school, the parents felt like their children with disabilities, some of who were like 30 years or even, and more, they had been in that school and they were not seeing them coming out. So it was like, why do we have this school here? Why do we have this school? So one was saying, if I don't take my child to school, the law will punish me. So I take my child to school because it's government policy, you know. But in real sense, I don't see my child benefiting in this school. Yeah, these were, yeah, the learners had intellectual disabilities. Yeah, they were like, I don't see my child benefiting. So for me, this is schooling, but I need my son to acquire an education. And for him, it was an education that will lead to the son becoming independent, being able to earn or make a living, to not depend on the parents or anyone else, you know. He went further to skills. I want my child to get skills, to gain skills. And we had examples of fathers who were actually doing that. Like this mother was saying, my husband is not involved in my child's education, not involved. But in my child's schooling, my husband is not involved in my child's schooling. He doesn't attend meetings. He doesn't want to hear about the school. But when my child is at home, he asks my child to do cause. For example, if he's repairing something, he calls the son, please come here and watch what I'm doing. Please, you see your mom is maybe sweeping, please take the broom, do like that, you know. So he was doing that. So it was like our interpretation was like, this is another form of education. Like if he's repairing something and calls the son, what is happening here? It's like, please get skills that you can make you independent. So there was that. So education, what is it? The other question was, what is the difference between education and schooling? Yeah, schooling might be the structures, the colonial ways, the ones that I say are military or factory-like, you know, the ones that are now the current ones. Those are schools, you know. So sometimes we focus so much on schools, getting the child to school, and we forget asking the deeper questions on what are children doing in the school, what are children benefiting in the classroom, are children benefiting this school? That is the deeper question. So that's how the difference between education and schooling came about. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice, you good?
Okay, so now it's a follow-up question. Would you then say children with disabilities would benefit more from using our traditional educational systems, which is the informal. I think in your paper you said it's informal. You did mention something about 3 different types of traditional systems that we used, which was informal, formal, and the conscious. So would you say children with disabilities, with intellectual disabilities, would benefit more using our old traditional education system?
I wouldn't say that, because that will be totalizing. It's like, why should children with disabilities be the only ones to benefit from traditional? I think everyone can benefit. It's not only children with disabilities, because they are also not a homogeneous group. We have, if we talk about intellectual disability, we know we have it is also a spectrum in a way. So we can't say my belief is any child can benefit from education. It's just how we do education, be it traditional, be it modern. So I would very much be against saying children with disabilities should benefit from traditional. It will be very much it's not the right to I wouldn't say that at all. Yes.
Thank you, Mani. Okay, we'll give other people opportunity. Onati has a hand up. Onati, please come in. You're on mute, Onati, if you're speaking.
Oh, sorry, Ike. I was saying in a minute. I was just trying to switch on my lights. Well, I just wanted to weigh in onto what Imani is saying, and to say to Alice, I don't know. Well, you asked the question, Alice. I'm not picking on you, but we do have schools within the education system in South Africa that are termed schools of skills. And one of the schools is based here in East London, and I know there are some schools in Cape Town as well that are schools of skills. In those schools of skills, they have a certain level of intellectual disability or cognitive impairment that they take. And in their curriculum, they mix skills and basic formal subjects, if I may put it that way. They do English, basic English, they do mathematics, one more language, and they do life skills as 4 subjects. Then they have workshops. And in those workshops, they are taught skills. And some of the skills are in agriculture. Some children go into panel beating. Some go into sewing. Some go into hospitality. And I think they've got about 8 different skills that they teach in the schools. And I want to say that would be an ideal, for me, that is an ideal school, but that cannot be rolled out for all students. It would be ideal if education could follow that, because I also know that there are parents whose children do not have the required diagnosis, but they somehow are able to manipulate the system and get their children to go to those schools because they value the education that the children get from those schools. And once they have passed from those schools of skills, high school level of education, then they go to a college. And in a college, an FET college, then they do artisans and they do other skills education. And from there, they can develop to do degrees and this and that. But what I'm saying is that we do have a system, whether it is in a small scale or in a trial scale, where we are infusing formal and I will say informal. I won't say informal. I'll say skills education in one. And I think that would be ideal for education. Yeah. I'm just giving that as an example of what is feasible. But obviously, such schools need a lot of resources and workshops and skilled teachers to work with the children. Yeah. Thank you. I wanted to throw in that point to say maybe let's research on such schools. It's a very interesting concept. And I think the Department of Education is looking at expanding those, but you know how governments work. It will take 100 years before we get to that.
Thanks, Nati. I don't know if Amani, is there anything you want to say about that, or?
I think it's fine. I think Onati has captured it very well.
Okay.
Yes, there's a place for such skill-based training. Yes, and yeah. So education shouldn't be about intellect. I think the modern one, it's so much. There's so much focus on intellectual. Yeah, intellectual.
Yeah. So that's where as Unati was actually speaking, even before she spoke. That's where I was thinking, because I was still on that question. How are those skills valued compared to where you have just only intellectual, development, So it goes around that who's knowledge. So when that person finishes, this person has the skills and everything, but is he on equal par with when someone graduates from university, you get a degree, are they held the same, with the same value and thing? So that's why combining those two, as we're doing that, we still continue to interrogate whose knowledge. When people come up with that, how is it valued, here in the West, and things like that, So it's not, so that's where it's linking to what you were saying, Dr. Carissa, where you were saying that, okay, it shouldn't be just something for persons with disabilities. And that's where Unachi is saying that, no, it's actually for other people. Where I'm going for, saying, how is it valued, to interrogate that in terms of not being seen as, lower class, or if you cannot make it in the intellectual, knowledge production realm, then you can go there, and the rest of it. Yeah, those dynamics. And sorry, I wanted to add, I think linked to what Alice was saying, and linked to what Dr. Carissa is saying, because you keep talking about people will just leave it at access, So when it comes to learners with disabilities, just but there needs to be access, full participation, and achievement. So that means it leads you to achievement in, not only achievement in graduation, but achievement in life. That means whatever you learn, you're able to use it to fully participate in society and live independently. So, Dr. Carissa, so that's part of the conversation we were having before you came in. I didn't want to say it immediately. We wanted to have students to ask questions. We're going into that contextual, saying that how does UDL cater to our context? A lot of things came out, and one of them was, the first thing that was highlighted was by one of the students in Bali. She was saying that, you know what, we've just taken this framework, we implement, take that framework, we implement, without the policy makers, they don't even sometimes not even fully understand the framework, but they just say, teachers, you have to implement this, you have to run with it. Students were coming up that, first of all, there's no full understanding about it. Second, the training is not there. And if the training happens, it's usually like once off. It's not something that happens, continuously. The resources are not there. The support for the teachers is not made available. Lack of funding. And then, so those kind of things were things that were highlighting that. So now we have UDL that has come in and saying that it's almost like just do what you can and run with it. So the only solution we could come up with at the moment was say, take it one step at a time, see what you can implement. And then, so I don't know if you have any other thoughts around that area.
Yeah, so yes, I will. I think the big work that we need to do is not to a solution for everything.
Sorry, the connection broke
First
off.
of all,
We're saying?
oh, okay. I mean, UDL, we shouldn't think it's a be all, what do they say, be all, take all or something, you know? If you tell UDL to a person who has never heard about UDL, I did that one time. They were like, but we have this other framework. There's this framework already. And I can see a lot of things that are already in this framework that they are also captured in UDL. So what is very different from, they were like, but we have another thing. We have this, we have this. So there's a real risk of maybe UDL being like, we put a lot of currency on UDL. It's you publish a paper on UDL, the chances of it being your best cited paper are very high. And like, so I'm trying to say it has currency, and who is pushing UDL. It is a global one. They love it, and yes, we need to be very critical. We need to really consider what we are selling, and considering all those dynamics, like, are the policy makers aware? What are the limitations? Like, what are we blind to when we consider UDL? What are we not seeing when we push UDL? Like the issues of the example I gave on, UDL, but then the exam is very much not UDL like. So how do you? We need a bigger conversation with whoever make the laws on how to examine students. That is a conversation that needs to happen. Yeah. And yes, otherwise UDL will be another slogan, another slogan on the road of inclusive education. Yes, it will be just something fancy to talk about. In fact, there was a friend who was saying this, when we talk about education for learners or for persons with disabilities, we have catchphrases that keep coming and going. And he went ahead and listed. Yes, there was a time we were talking about this. There was a time we were talking about this. There's a time we were talking. Now UDL. When is the next one coming? So, and I mentioned UDL to Hasha, and I think every time I mentioned UDL to Hasha, the question was, but where is it coming from? Who is pushing us to, she was asking those questions of, but why are we just accepting it? Like, this is not the very words she used, but she was like asking those questions. Yeah.
Very true, because just like you said, what is universal is colonial, and UDL is not neutral. Yeah, and I agree with that. It's not neutral. It comes with its own interests, ways of being, ways of knowing, and the rest of it. Okay, Cedric, go ahead. And then I'll read what Afikile said in the chat. Cedric, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to on that point about why it's not being implemented. I think Unati and Fikile touched on that point already. I think to me it's about the resources firstly, and who makes the resources available. It's a system, and then, like Unati said, the politics. There's always politics involved. So I think that's where the challenges comes in. We need to start. Okay, my previous comments, I said we need to start from the bottom, but okay, we also need to start from the top, because that is where the resources comes from, and that is where the decisions are made. So we can have the utopias of the UDL, of the CS, but if there's no resources, then everything will just fall away. Fade away, basically. Let me use that word. So to me, it's about the resources, and then the politics, and the system. Like I said, we need to change the system, but the system starts at the top, from the leaders, the decision makers. So it's easy for us to think, come up with ideas. UDL is a perfect tool to use for learning, in my opinion. But if you don't have the resources, we live in a developing country, South Africa. If I think in terms of the global north, in most of the countries, I think it's working for them, for the learners. So it's a mix of to me, a mix of both. So we need to look at the global north, how it worked for them, how it was implemented, and then use some of the aspects, not all of the implementation methods and that, because we need to keep it, like you say, contextual within the South African context. Then also coming to South Africa, we already in South Africa, we have different cultures, beliefs. So that also plays a role when you have to implement things like UDL if you're in your different regions. That also has an impact on how people implement it, the attitudes. It all has an impact on that.
Let me see if Dr. Kalisa wants to say anything. Otherwise, I will say something because that's a very important point you made.
Yeah, I think that's so true what he said. The resources system, the politics. Yeah, I will just say I agree with what he's saying. The important, we are critical of UDL, but it doesn't mean it is not a useful framework. It is very much useful. We can learn a lot from it. Yes, we shouldn't throw away the baby with the, is it the water or the towel? Yes, yeah. So it is a very useful framework that makes us, it extends how we view education. Yeah, but there are those contextual realities that we should be alive to and try to see how we can address them. So thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kalisa, and that's my stance also. We should not implement uncritically. We should be critical implementers. And Cedric, you've touched on an area that gives me a headache. You touched on an area that gives. In fact, yesterday I was arguing it with academics at UCT. This thing of resources, because I will ask you the question: does Africa not have resources? Do we not have resources? And when you check, you will see that the answer is we do have resources. So why is the resources not being used? So I won't go into much details, but that's all the question I will ask about. Because we're talking about, look at how it was done in the global north. And when you look at it, you will see there were resources, but we have resources. So let me leave it at that for question for you guys to ponder further. Isanda.
That question, Ike, that question will instigate war. Yeah. Don't ask it.
So that's why I don't want us to go into it. Let me leave it to the students. Go, if it touches you.
Otherwise, there's going to be a world war if we ask about the resources of Africa. Isanda?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Isanda. After Isanda, now read Afikile's comment. Forget about our comment. Isanda, please go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Ike. I just wanted to check if on your side are you able to see my comments, because I can't see any comments popping up on my side. I've sent a question a long time ago.
Oh, I read that one. That's the one that starts with is it the one that starts with I think UDL is important because it shifts the focus. Is that the one?
No.
Oh, there's another one. Another one before that or after that?
I'm also looking on my side. I don't see anything.
Yeah, the last thing I see. Yeah, the last thing I see is the last thing I see from you, Isanda, is this keeps kicking me out. Hence, I choose to engage on comment section. That's the last thing I see.
Oh my!
That means not coming to.
I've been trying to.
So sorry.
It's okay.
So sorry. Teams does that.
My side. Yeah, okay. My question was how do we as we discussed the UDL as a proactive approach to moving barriers. So my question is, how do we prevent the UDL from becoming just another policy framework, and instead ensure it transforms everyday teaching practice, especially in under-resourced schools? What needs to change at a system level for that to happen? That was my question.
Okay. Dr. Kaisa, you want to?
Yeah. I think we have been trying to, there's no straight answer, but I think we have tried to touch on that. Even the response or the comment by Cedric, I think it also touched on that, because first of all, what needs to happen is, of course, the political buy-in. Yes, do the people who make the laws, do they understand this framework, and are they receptive to the idea? Do they want it implemented? And even we keep on saying it is working in the global north. I'm very much, I don't know. In like 2 years back, the papers were like UDL. We all talk about UDL, but the evidence is very limited. There is no scientific, like they had evidence that UDL is we're just rushing to implementing. So some papers, there are quite a number of papers who are like critiquing that aspect. So we keep saying it is working in the global north, but we need really evidence. And I know there are some that came like showing the evidence that this framework can actually work, which is what we had believed before the evidence. Yes, but I believe, there's a time we went to Tanzania to train teachers on UDL. There was a project there, and the teachers were being trained on UDL. So the way we did it, it was like I had like and I say like 3 hours to teach UDL, and then you let teachers go. So for me, that doesn't work. It doesn't work because there's more. There needs to be more than that short periods of training. So I'm just trying to say training also. I think for you who have been at UCT, I think you are better placed, because I know UDL has been maybe you have been you've looked at it like now what we are doing. A friend told me that if you really want to be grounded into something, don't only look at the advantages or the good things. Go to the other side, look at the other side, and then now take your stand. Because there'll be very little things few things that will surprise you. So for you, you've been you've learned UDL, you've been taught about UDL, you've read about it, and now this discussion here and others that you might have had are also making you to look at the other way of UDL. You see, which now when you come to implementation, you will really be convinced. This friend was telling me in the context of religion, like, are you a Christian? Are you a Muslim? Make sure you read the good things about Christianity and also read about the bad things of Christianity or Islam, and then now make your decision. Do you want to remain a Muslim or a Christian or any other religion? Yeah, so for UDL, that's I would say the same thing. So the conviction of the practitioners, it's something. And yes, let's base our arguments on evidence, because you go to the policymakers, sometimes they ask for evidence. I don't know, Ike, there was a project that we were almost trying to implement. We were almost implementing at an organization. It was UDL based. It was called I think they called it something. Yes, and it was like trying to address what actually happens. Can UDL really improve learning outcomes? But then it didn't go through. I think you said it was USAID funded. So when USAID withdrew, that's how it ended. So we need evidence, even in South Africa, apart from these teachings, this gospel that UDL is good. UDL is. Do we have evidence, hard evidence, that we can convince the policymakers? And I know by hard evidence, I don't mean only quantitative. I mean even the qualitative, yes, but also we need to make room for all that evidence. Like this has happened, and this. So please, if we implement this framework, learning can be this way. So we need such studies. Yes. So I think how can we make UDL work? I will just share that and the points that have already been raised by Cedric and yeah, even Ike. Yeah.
Thank you. So people, that's master's research for a lot of you. That's Dr. Carissa has just pinned master's topic area to do master's topic that looks into the evidence of UDL, UDL implementation, and the rest of it. Oh, there's so many things coming in. Okay, let me read what is in the chat because we're almost out of time. Afikile said, I found it interesting that some fathers, so I think she's referring to your study, Amani. I find it interesting that some fathers question whether the special school was preparing their children for adulthood. Some even felt that the school focused more on care than on meaningful learning, describing it as a school, but it's not a school. This highlights the gap, I think that's the gap between what schools believe they are providing and what families expect from education. However, I also think there is a risk in focus a lot on practical skills, so only practical skills. While practical skills are important, learners with intellectual disability should also have opportunities to develop academically, socially, and emotionally. Education should not limit their potential simply because of assumptions about what they can achieve. Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I think the biggest mistake you should do as a researcher, a critical scholar, is to totalize.
Yeah.
To try to group people, to put something into a yoke.
Yeah.
It is a very dangerous thing. So yes. Yeah.
Alice says the global north controls the systems that decide what counts as legitimate knowledge. Yes. And then the Cedric responded to that. I agree, but not completely. Not after almost 35 years of democracy. Okay, that's another discussion. All right. Then Alice says global South's resources are systematically rooted through structures, currency hierarchies, debt servicing on equal terms of trade that converts resources for the global north. I agree with that. And that's why I'm paying very good attention to what is happening in Burkina Faso. I'm paying very, very strict attention to what is happening there and watching it. Debt, then Cedric says debt, very good point. Do we still have a say in our country? But that's a very good question. So that's where that question, whose knowledge? So what we're saying is that you continue with what you're learning at university and implementing, but don't lose sight of the bigger questions. Those things that I have to talk about, whose knowledge, don't lose sight of that. Very important. But it is about education. I'm sure we can start making a difference somewhere. The new knowledge must be initiated somewhere. Yeah. So don't lose sight of it and don't get overwhelmed by it. Implement the small changes which we can. So as what I was saying, these are things that have evolved over hundreds of years. You can't change it in 10 years, 20 years. You can't. You can, but you can also not stop and say you can't make any change. Can make small, and that's what Dr. Carissa, has been saying. We're actually out of time. Amanda, you can see, I'm telling you, if we continue with this conversation, we will go for another 2 hours, speaking more about this. Yeah. So I will say that's a very good point to bring it to a close. Unati, I don't know if there's any last thing you want to say, and I'll leave it to Dr. Carissa if there's any last thing you want to say, and then we close off.
No, just as a closing remark, I would concur with what Alice is saying. I think it's her comment that yes, it's Afikile, that children, whether disabled or not, we do need an element of structure and an element of formality in education. So I think we need to strike a balance between what is already in place and what is contextually relevant. And like I made that example of School of Skills, I think that route is a good example or a good experiment of what could be possible. Because if we were to say, let's implement our traditional education skills only, there would be things that we would lack. So we need to extract some skills from the existing global North knowledge and infuse it with what we require and what is beneficial education for us. And therefore, again, there's no wrong or right, but I'm happy that this conversation of decolonizing education is a mind opener, especially for people who have never been exposed to this kind of knowledge, to say, yes, global North is bad, but it's not all bad, because at least it is giving us a framework to put in what, or to fit in what is relevant for us. We can use that framework to put in what is relevant for us, because they still need to write, they still need to know alphabets, they still need to know mathematics and write reports. At the same time, they need relevant skills for living, because if they cannot make a living out of that mathematics, then with their hands, they can build structures that could bring in income for their existence.
Thank you very much. Dr. Karisa, any last words?
Yeah, thank you. As Onati was speaking, I remembered the concept of third space, whereby we are saying if we have global North and global South, there can always be a middle ground, which is the third space. Yes. Yeah, so let us converse. And that third space is the space of creativity, the space for innovation, the space for conversion. Yeah, conversation. Yes. So I'll say let us preach, not only preach, but let us also drink what we preach. Thank you.
Thank you.
And not throw the baby with the water.
Yes. Exactly. All right, everybody.
Yes.
Dr.
Thank
Ike,
you.
I see Isanda's comment is in the real time. What do they call this? The RTT, the real time.
RTT.
Yeah, it's in there.
Oh, today's discussion has made me realize that. Oh, how do you see? You see, Cedric. You see what I was talking about? The changes teams make, and you know, this is the first time I'm seeing it. So probably that's why it's happening. That's why it's happening to her, because I've never seen this RTT before. This is my first time. So probably that's why she was struggling also. Okay, it says today's discussion has made me realize that inclusion is often treated as an educational issue, or perhaps it's also a social justice. Yes. If learners continue to experience poverty, inequality, language barriers, and exclusion outside the classroom, can UDL in its own achieve meaningful inclusion, or does it need to be part of? Yes, I also agree it's a social justice issue. When you read Nancy Fraser's social justice, it's talked about political, economic, and cultural. Economic is the access. Political is, are you even there when the decision is being made? Then cultural is, are you included in terms of race, gender, disability? You know, so yes, I agree. I'm sure Dr. Karisa also agrees with that. All right, everyone, let me not keep us, but Dr. Karisa, thank you very much for this very, very meaningful engagement. And I will say not only meaningful, but something we need to take into practice, not just knowledge. So not just what we're learning here, but practice. And is that it is at its infancy, you know, early stages. And we are the ones as scholars, just like you said, tasked with taking it forward. So thank you very much. And thanks everybody for the engagement. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Imani.
Bye.
Dr. Ike?
Yes, is that
sorry, it's Ilamia.
Ilam?
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
let me
still
stop
on the
recording.
way.
Just
Yeah,
let
we're
me
still
stop.
okay, sure.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're still on the way home from